A tēnā tātou. Whakatakete au ki te uru. Whakatakete au ki te tonga. Kia mākene kene ki uta. Kia mātaratara ki tai. Kia ia ki tātou kure e teo. Auka. E hau. A tihe mauri ora. A ngā uri o ngā waka. Ngā morehu o ngā hapu ko tēnei te mihi o te te o ngā maramara i te waka o tainui. Nō reira me whakahono re te ariki tuheitia. Te kāhui ariki te whare o pōtatau. Nō reira. Ngā mate koa haere ki te pō, haere ki tāwhiti nui, ki tāwhiti roa, ki tāwhiti pāmamao. I te honga mate, te honga mate, te honga ora, te honga ora. Nō reira, tēnā tātou. He wātoru atu ana te ngā kau ki ranginui e tūnei ki papatu tuanuku e takoto nei, ki ngā pauwhare o ngā tūpuna. He whakara nui ane ki ngā tangata katoa, e whakatoki ai ko te ngā kau mārama ki roto ki tēnā o tātou. I whakahonoa ko te kiku ki te wairua, hei whakapākiri a tātou e te akako nei te reo o ngā tūpuna. I te atorangi o papa mo ngā tūpuna. Koe rā e rongo whakiiri ki runga ki a tēnā.
Tēnā.
Hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa ko hui mai nei, nei rā taku mihi mai oha kia tātou katoa i tēnei ata, anō hoki kia koe pai haka tuwhira tēnei huihuinga tā tātou. Hei whakawhiti kōrero mō ngā huihuinga o enei kāhui ko tai mai tēnei rā. Nō reira, i tēnei wā, ko hoati te rākau kōrero kia Keringawai, kia whakarite i ngā whakaritenga mō tēnei whare o tātou, ka tahi ka timata hia wa tātou kaupapa kōrero mō te ata. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou, tautoko ngā mihi kua mahia. Anei te mahi tuatahi, he whakaritenga mō te health and safety. So please sit back in your chairs and think you're on Air New Zealand. Tuatahi evacuations, if we are in a need for evacuation, it is just straight out these doors down to the front of Te Papa. During an earthquake, if that should occur, it's quite foreign for us in Te Huku o Te Ika. We don't get any earthquakes up there, but it's drop, cover and hold. Following that tsunami, and in our kōrero today we'll be talking about some storms and some waves, but if one was to occur, we just need to connect with our host just down the front in some pretty shirts. And finally, if there's a medical emergency, call 111 or again approach one of our Te Papa hosts. And finally, and most importantly, no smoking, no vaping in the building. Kia ora tātou. So, ko wai maua, ko taku teina, ko Ngawaiata. We were fortunate enough to grow up under the pariro, under the care of our nannies, just to provide some context to who we are and why we were able to be a part of this amazing kaupapa. Our kuia was Ngāro Maru Pāpera. She was the best friend to Nani Hilda, Ngā Hiraka. They were the stalwarts for the Māori Women's Welfare League, for the Kohanga Reo, and along with those nannies, you've got Uncle Stanley's mum, Nana Keringawai. You got Nana Millie Franks, you got Nanny Sophie, and then following on from that, we were fortunate enough to be with Sir Graham Latimer, Lady M, for the Tai Tokero Māori Trust Board, and for our own whānau hapu in Ngāti Kahu from Kauhanga Marae, which you'll see some slides up there of the famous or infamous wānangas that we either had at the marae or we had in our famous red and white marquee tent. So that's just how we started, and then how we ended on this journey sitting up here was our dad was our mum's pot cleaner. And he loved supporting our mum, must have, because that's the only reason why I was at Aurere cleaning pots. And then he ended up loving sailing with these amazing chiefs over here. And his name was Pita Evans, and he became a Pou navigator. So that's just a little bit about myself and my sister. And our first pātai that we're going to share is just briefly to each of our chiefs sitting up here is ko wai koe, no hea koe, and what was your role on the waka when you were selected? Kia ora, Uncle Jack.
Ai, kura tātou. Tautoko ngā mihi o tu ānei e pāna ki te Keringawai o koutou kei Wanganui. Hia mātou ngā kaumuana o te Aurere. Tēnei he mihi nui i rungi i a koutou. Ko wai au, ko Tiaki Wepiha te kāpene Thatcher ahau, but everybody calls me Jacko. No te tai rāwhiti ahau, taitanga hauiti, Ngāti Porou, te whānau tūwhakairi ora ngā iwi o tōku pāpa, tipu ake tōku māma kei raro o ka Aturangi kei whakatāne tōna kāinga, Ngāti awa te iwi, Ngāti hokopū, tōna hapu. E noho anau i roto o tauranga mona, mo tata ki te katoa taku nei au. Kei raro i te manaaki tango o te iwi o tōku kuia, he makarauri ia, anei au he pāpaka no rangataua, ko tuake mai nei ki ngui a koutou. Tēnā tātou. What was that a question?
What was your role?
I was a cook.
Tēnā tātou, tautoko nā mihi ka mihia, ko wai au, ko Saimau o tōku ingoa, he ure hau no tūhoi, taitanga huiti, Ngāti awa. I think my role, I was builder by trade, so I think that got me onto the waka. Yeah. Not that there's not many nails in there, but yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora tātou katoa. E tumi atu ki a koe Pita e mihi ki a kau ki a mauri a mātema i roto i tō mātema tūnui ki te rangi. I no reira, kia ora tātou katoa. Ko wai ahau, ko Stanley Conrad ahau, ko ngā tikuri te au pauri, nai tokoto, te raroa, Ngāti kau, toko māma ko Keringawai, toko pāpa ko Niki, kānara, i tupu ake au i roto i te kou. My position on the waka is kai hautu, so kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Stan.
Kia ora, Craig Subritzky from Te Kau, Aotearoa tribe, Ngāi Takatoa, Ngāti Kuri. Yeah, my position, I was just a sailor.
Rangatai.
Oh, jeez, shouldn't have done that. E mihi ki a koe e Pita mo tō tūwhakatera i tātou i tūnei ata i tēnei wahanga. E mihi ki a koe te katoa, ko Māori Bercic taku ingoa, ko te flash ingoa i te tarara no tai tokerau, ko i te takiwa hokianga whakapau karihia, ki ta raki o hokianga, ki Waiparera, ko te raroa me te iwi o te patu toka, te hapu. Well, I was actually a cook on the support boat on the way over, and they gave Jacko the kick on the way back, and I ended up being a cook on the way back from Aotearoa, from Rarotonga. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, ko Māori.
Kia ora koutou. Kei te tautoko au, nā mihi ki a koe a Pita. No reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko te Aturangi Nepia-Clamp ahau, no te tai rāwhiti, no nā iwi Ngāti Porou, runga whakaata me kahununu. So, komo ana, I was a sailor on Te Aurere. Kia ora.
Tēnā tātou. I'm humbled to sit next to these guys. My role was came about as in 1990 when they built 20 odd waka. I set out to film them all, and so I met Hek. And so Hek invited me to come and film the construction of Aurere, and so I had it in my mind from the felling of the trees to its arrival in Ngātangia. And so that's what I did. Kia ora no tātou katoa.
Kia ora koutou. Nā nei kei a Keringawai e tahi pātai e pāna ki wa koutou whea ko ki runga i te waka.
Ka pai, tuatahi. So we know back in those days, a lot of you travelled far and wide to the beautiful far north. Let's hear some stories about how you got home up to the far north, and also why were you selected by your people to be a part of this kaupapa?
Oh, starting with me. So I started out life in Waka in 1988, broke my leg, and my uncle came over to my place and said, "Oh, you're no good to your football team, you might as well come with me." So I went for a hui at Rewa Marae in Ruatoki, and a group of 8 of us, and we were standing between mongrel mob on one side and black power on the other, wondering what the hell are we doing here. And cut a long story short, all those guys that were in their whare became the crew of Mātātua Aotearoa. They travelled to Pewhairangi for the 1990 celebrations of the signing of the treaty, 150th. And I got chosen as one of the kaihotu. And then from there, I met Stan and Hector, actually, when they came down to teach us how to paddle properly. First time we got in Wakatau, one called Tawanui and Tauranga, we capsized it and lost the tauihu. And luckily for us, the tide wasn't going out because it was straight down where we lost it, so we managed to pull it out of the water and then got a growling. You know, those are the sorts of things you remember. 1992, I went up with Te Toi o Mātātua, and we arrived up there for the launching. And I always remember driving in our bus up to the beach, seeing her on the beach when before she was painted. She was just this white thing sitting on the beach with this mast sticking up, with this tree sticking up. And I got a buzz, and so I stowed away on board. I was supposed to do the whirl for the Queen, totally didn't do it, because I was out hiding away on the waka, and a 14-year-old had to go out and do it. And then my chief, Te Pene Mamaku, made me do 100 press-ups in front of the Queen and apologised profusely and said, "I hope you enjoyed your ride, boy. That'll probably be the last time you do that." So that's how I got there.
I think the beginning is a lot similar to his, but the ending's not. Yeah, so in 1989 we carved, I was one of a group that helped carve 2 waka for the 1990 celebrations of the coming of the European to Pita, yeah, for sure. So we had no idea how to paddle it, so Stanley and Marty came down and with Uncle Heck and to train, so they trained us. And that selection, and then they said, "Oh, who wants to go?" Basically, who wants, anyone. So Pakake and I put our hand up, and so the journey started from there, where we would every training session that we had would get on a plane, fly to Whangarei, and then just drive up from there every weekend, whenever possible. But I gotta say, we had a lot of support from our whānau, yeah, both whānau, yeah, especially our in-laws, yeah. That's it.
Oh yeah, so my journey is a little longer. I started with kaupapa waka in 74, when my dad was the kaihotu on Ngātoki Matawhaurua. He was 11 years old, and then got involved with Ngātoki over the years, the Waitangis and stuff like that. And then in 1984, got selected as a crew member for the rediscovery voyage of Hokulea. It was leaving Hawaii, and it was doing a rediscovery voyage through the Pacific and getting to Rarotonga, and then got selected as a crew member to represent our iwi, and then flew to Rarotonga, and not realising what I was getting myself involved. When I arrived there, I think the best part of that trip was flying on the aeroplane for the first time, and I had Uncle Himi Henare and Auntie Rose and Hector and Hilda and our whānau anea Tupi Puriri, and then another whānau of ours, Pita, what's his name? I forgot. His dad used to call Story. They all flew over, and then still not waking up to what I was actually going to be part of until I saw Hokulea, and realised this could be the beginning of everything. So when I ended up time to leave, then I got matuku. Yeah, getting on that waka, and I thought, well, it'd be here to do something, and yeah, it was a opening, and then I got that first voyage on Hokule in 1985 to Pewhairangi, and then 87 did a return voyage from Rangiroa back to Hawaii, and then 89 circumnavigated Hawaiian Islands with Hokule, and then in 1990 the Waka Festival with all our wakas, and got to meet Jack and them and that, and then from then on built Te Aurere with 92, and then got selected to be the kaihautu for that leg. So yeah, that journey was a short, but what I said, but a lot longer. But yeah.
So for me, my journey was probably Stan sort of was just asked up home, anyone want to go on the waka down to Wakatai on Ngātuki, and so there was a few of us started going, and then and I sort of hung in there, and from paddling, then Te Aurere came up, and just travelling. I travelled down the Stan each sort of weekend. It was that's how it started for me, and yeah.
Well, for me, I was almost as old as Stanley starting. I was part of a kapahaka group Takido in Whangarei, and in the early days, all the kapahaka groups in Taitokoro, because Hilda and Hector were part of those groups, and so they put a tono out for any kaihoi males from those kapahaka groups to go to Waitangi, and so that's how I think I first started on Ngātuki in 1979, and became a crime and partner with Stanley, and we were made 1984. We were made training kaihautu on Ngātuki with Stan, myself, and Felix Davis, the junior, and been with Ngātuki ever since. And by being with Ngātuki, Hector was the main kaihautu for there, and it just gravitated towards that way that I ended up going to Te Aurere, because I was a cook, and usually Auntie Hilda would say, oh, Hector looked at my hands and said, you can't carve for buggery, so you might as well cook our kai for the waka and for the crew wānanga. So that ended up being my job, and so yeah, I've been with Te Aurere from the time it was launched, and been on the crew from Rarotonga to Rapa Nui and Hawaii as well. So, yep. So it's just been a progression of going from Wakatoa and still within Wakatoa, but also got waka hourua as part of my feather in my cap. Good.
From primary school, where I was taught that our ancestors were accidental drifters. They went fishing in the islands, they got caught out in a storm, they drifted and drifted and drifted until they bumped into land. I was taught that at primary school. Luckily, I'd go home at night and my mother would say, well, what did you learn at school today, son? And I'd tell her, and she said, no, that's not right. She told me about the proud history that I should have, that we have, of our ancestors. Came in the Takitimu and Horota, and she taught me that knowledge. So from a young age, I was very committed and dedicated to do something in my lifetime to improve the knowledge around our voyaging ancestors. So 1990, I had an opportunity to carve a dream that I'd had in 1983, which was a canoe prow to celebrate our voyaging ancestors. So I carved that in Gisborne. my apprentice was Bill Baker, who came from up north, not far from where Hector came from, and we went up there to spend a bit of time and found out about Te Aurere. So I went and made myself known to Hekenukumai Ngāiwi. Now, very important, Hekenukumai Ngāiwi, bringing the iwi together. So what Hekenukumai did was he was looking for people from different areas of Aotearoa to sail on Te Aurere on the inaugural voyage. And so luckily I got selected to represent Tai Rāwhiti on that voyage. Now, travelling up to Te Aurere, coming from Gisborne, it was quite a haul. I didn't have a budget or the money to fly, so I drove. And I think we were training every fortnight. So every fortnight I'd jump in my car at midnight, because no traffic, and I'd head over. So this one particular time, it was during a time when there was a lack of power in Aotearoa because the dams were empty, and so they used to turn off the street lights. Anyway, I got to a portakey about 2 o'clock in the morning, and because the street lights were out, as you enter a portakey, there's an area there where you can do 70, and then you come to the 50, and then of course you turn left at the turn there and head off up north. So coming into a portakey, I was doing 90 where I should have been doing 70, and then I was doing 70 where I should have been doing 50, and because I was going too fast, when it came to turn left at the stop sign, yeah, I actually went around the wrong side of the island, and then just carried on. Before I knew it, there were lights flashing behind me, and this cop pulled me up. I wound down my window, and I said, and he says, you know what? You came into town, you were doing 90 and a 70, you were doing 70 and a 50, you went around the wrong side of the island, that's $500 right there. And I said to him, what are you doing here? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You've had an argument with your missus, haven't you? You've had an argument with Mum, and you're out here annoying me because of it. And he looked at me and he says, what? So I repeated it, and he says, look, you're in big trouble. Where's your licence? Just that day I got my international driver's licence, so I showed him it. And he says, oh, you're travelling. I says, oh, I don't think so after I pay this fine. Won't be able to afford it. And so he says, well, where are you going and what are you doing? And, you know, this time of the morning. So I told him, going up to Te Aurere, told him all about our voyage, our upcoming voyage, and he had a good listen. And he says, you know what? I'm going to give you a warning, but if I catch you again, I'm going to throw the book at you. Well, okay, thank you. Off I went. Did our training and then headed home on the Monday. You wouldn't believe it, but I had got a flat tyre in Ohope. So I changed the tyre, and when I put the weight back onto the tyre, I could hear this hissing sound. Oh no, bloody thing's got a leak. So I took off to a portakey. When I got into a portakey, all I was thinking about was getting to the gas station so I could put some more air into my tyre. Before I knew it, there was lights flashing behind me. Same cop pulled me over, and he says, I got you again. I says, fair enough, mate, you got me. I know you're going to throw the book at me, but can we go to the garage because I need to put some air in my rear right tyre? And if I can do that, you can throw the book at me then. He says, what's wrong with your tyre? I said, I had a blowout and in Ohope, and the tyre I put on has got a leak. He looked at me, pull your boot. Pulled the boot. Had a look in the boot, saw the blown out tyre. Next thing I see him on his hands and knees, listening to the tyre. Got back up, sort of dusted himself off, and he said to me, if I catch you again, that's my story about travelling to
Kia ora, Aturangi. That reminds of many funny stories when It was parts of the road would be gravel when you hit the north. You didn't know if the car was full of gas, you just had to drive. We share some funny stories with Uncle Pene Mamaku's crew when they came home for the tangi of Auntie dinner about, no, we had $10. We put it in the car and it got us all the way there. So thank you for sharing that, and also thank you for sharing those amazing hononga and connections of the year of the waka and before that. So it's quite special how Papa Hector was so gifted, being that a bridge builder by trade, but also building bridges amongst people. And Pita, if we've got anything to share, I know you were recording, so you'd most probably got a lovely helicopter view of what was happening.
Oh, kia ora. First of all, I wasn't nominated by any iwi or anything to be part of this. I was awarded a state, so I didn't know who I was. In 1977, I think it was 77, around then, late 70s anyway, I found myself in Whirinaki Forest with Dunmihaka for 2 trees that were felled for a waka. And at that night, in the marae at the whaiti, this kuia started speaking, and she said, I've lived here all my life, I've never ever spoken on this marae before. And I only speak now because of my concern for these trees. And she said a few other things as well, but it made me think when we were in the forest, and the night before there'd been a discussion about wahine in the forest when the trees were being felled and such like that. And so all the men left and left it to the wahine to make that decision. They decided to stay out of the forest. I wanted to film those trees, but I hadn't got a camera by then. The trees came down. I looked up, and there was a TVNZ crew with one of their crew members, a Pākehā woman, walking down the log. And those logs were cursed, and nothing good ever came from the waka that was made from that. Maybe something's good, but anyway, a lot of things happened, and they related back to what happened then. So when Hek asked me to make a film with this, and of course the first thing was the felling of the trees. So I was alert, I was interested, and I was keen to capture everything as perfectly as I could. And so I got to see everything done properly. And I got to see those logs become everything that we dreamed they would be, because everything was done properly then. And so it anchored within me the importance of those karakia, those kaumātua who delivered them, and the importance of holding on to our tikanga with these things. Kia ora.
And just on that note, knowing that the 2 logs from Te Aurere came from the Hekenukumai forest, was anyone in our rōpū here there when those logs were felled and carved?
We were there, we'd pull the logs down to the trailers and stuff, like more to the cutting of the logs, but the ones would have been there was Hector's son, and those kaumātuas back in those days. But that was a pretty, because we were all working, so we never had that time to do, and we were all prepping for a voyage, for the building of Te Aurere. So the process of bringing the logs out was pretty much, Hector kept it pretty close and pretty sealed regarding any of us getting involved, but that was his.
And it was done, at the time it was Nihu Tangi for Sir James Henare, and so he had gone from the Tangi and said his farewell and said that he was off to fulfill Sir James Henare's moia that a canoe be built to return to Hawaii sometime.
Yeah.
And that's when the tree was felled.
Uncle Stan, can you share the famous moment when Tahemi talks about the arrival of Hukulea at Te Tii Marae?
Oh yeah. That was that was an awesome that he got to do that, you know, his kōrero regarding the, like he said, you know, he could laugh, he could smile, he could laugh, you know, for the critics. I said it could never be done, and you've proven it today. You know, and that was a big moment of the rival of Hukule and Waitangi, and, you know, it just proved for him about, you know, our tupunas weren't accidental sailors, and that the Hukule had done that connection and all that, and so it was a big moment at that time, and especially with the old kaumātus and queers and our kaumātu queer that were there, you know, my dad and everybody were there, you know, and that's the cool thing about at that time, you know, being around when they're all there, you know, spending that time with our kaumātu and queer, and then I think the best time I think was when we after the ceremony, the welcome at that time in '85. The Hawaiians had all gone to their places to stay, and I was just in the whare, and I think it was that back then there was the old whare kai was still around, and sitting in there, and then having the old kaumātus asking questions about that voyage and what I saw and what I looked up in, and I talked about things, and then we came outside, and it was like I was the storyteller, and they were like the tamariki sitting around, and they were like, you know, they asked things like, oh, and I only gave the Greek names of the constellations and stuff, and I said, oh, that's the Orion's belt, and there's Taurus, and there's Matariki, there's Pleiades, and talked about all the different stars that I was looking when I voyaged down on Hukule, and yeah, just seeing them sort of the light in their eyes open, and you can hear them talking amongst themselves, but this is the whakatauki, this is the whakapapas that we've been reciting. And we hear Uncle John Rangiho and them, and Uncle Himi and Uncle Pa and them, and my dad and all those kaumātus just having a big chatter, and yeah, you know, it's sort of, to them it's like, even though they didn't voyage, but when I did that voyage and showed them that stuff, to them it's like they've been on the voyage pretty much physically on their own, but just showing them all those constellations and what the ocean was like, and the sort of tohus I saw on the ocean over that time. They were just, yeah, they were just pretty stoked that you know, that someone was out there, and the kōrero that they've been talking about over the whakapapas and stuff, it's all there. So pretty much not lost, eh? So yeah, that was cool.
Jack, can you share us what were some of those stars, constellations that you had to learn on the first voyage?
Yeah, much like Stan, we were all learning from these pieces of paper that came from Nainoa Thompson, and he shared them. I remember this piece of paper that had Orion, and it had Taurus and Matariki, and I think Takurua. So they were showing this area of the sky, and on it had look to the east and hold this up, and these stars should be just above the horizon at 10 p.m. on such and such a date. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I'm holding it up on that day, and I'm looking at them, and I'm going, yeah, this is awesome. And it's got all the names of the stars, Sirius, and Rigel, and Orion's belt, and Taurus with, I can't remember what Taumata Kuku's real name is, or other name, that's his real name, it's other name. My bad. Anyway, and Pleiades. Anyway, you know, and I remember, much like Atu, we had to drive from Tauranga. I started driving from Tauranga up north every other week. I'd leave work, get home just in time to say hooray to my wife, and then get on the road and drive up to Whanua, 550 kilometres up and 550 kilometres back. So I straight after work, drive up there, get up there some ungodly hour of the night, and they'd be up waiting for us. And then after work on the Sunday, drive home again, and doing that every other week for about 7-8 months. And then Tepene Mamaku says to me, oh, we want to try and get some of our boys onto that waka toa they're going to take over to Rarotonga. Take a van load up to the north. And I'm going, oh, God, how am I going to do that? And he says, oh, you can come down, pick the van up, take the boys. So I can drive down to Whakatane, pick the van up, drive with a van load of boys, aged between 12 and 30 something, and drive up to the far north. So get in there, so I've got to drive 90 kilometres back to Whakatane, 90 kilometres back to Tauranga, and then up to... and I'm going, God, blimey, and do this every other week for about 4 months, I think that was. And anyway, we broke down coming into Tekau, I think. Oh no, it was outside of Tekau, and I look up in the sky, and I see these stars up there. There's Orion, there's Takurua, and I'm going, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. They're supposed to be there at 10 o'clock at night. A few months ago. I'm not even on that pages anymore. You know, and then it went click in my head, okay, something's different is happening here, and I'm missing it. And so I then decided, I didn't decide, it was Pakeke that actually did it for us. He brought us a piece of paper that had, from astronomical knowledge of Māori, had all the names of the stars, you know, in Māori. And then I was reading through them, and this is one of these pinnacle moment things. I was reading through them, and it was Takurua is Sirius. It's got Atutahi is Canopus. Mm. It's got Puanga is Rigel. It's got Tautoru is Orion's belt. And it's got Matariki as thing. And I was going, oh, I've seen those names before somewhere. I can't remember. And I was, and I think they were in Ngawaiata. So I was hunting around for one of my old songbooks. Piece of paper falls out. On one side it has the haka kura tiwaka, and on the other side it has this tau that starts Taki na maira ko ngā huia matariki, puanga tautoru ka ngaro atu tahi mā e takurua, karewa keirunga te tini wheturiki, and puhia ki ta hau ki runga moe hau taku kuratangi whakaingo ngone. And I read that, and I go, I just get him goosebumps, because that was a goosebump moment. And then I realised, hey, I've got that thing of stars that's up in the heavens are there on my piece of paper, on that piece of paper they gave me, but they're actually in Waiata that I learned when I was in the 4th form at Pita College. And that sort of put a little seed of wanting to know more. And yeah, I wasn't very observant in the early days when we were learning those stars, because I remember one time when we were sailing back from Rarotonga, I was going, I'm going to be a navigator. so I had this thing, little circly thing. What do you call those again? Planetarium. No, planisphere. Planisphere. Anyway, I'm tutuing away with it, and I'm looking at it like this. And it's at night. I'm on watch, and I'm tutuing around with this thing. And then I hear this, whoa, look at that! And the whole deck lights up, and I'm going, what's that? And then I look up, and it's dark again. I missed the whole beautiful meteorite burning out in the atmosphere, lighting up the whole ocean, and I missed it because I was looking on my planisphere. So there you go. A very, very observant navigator. But you know, those are the things that we did. We learned from pamphlets and things that people gave us. We didn't have the computers that have all the flash things that we use to teach our students today. You had to go outside and study on stars for real. Now we look on a computer screen. And sometimes I think that you know, because I remember one time I'm at home, and my wife, she says, I get up, I was watching the sunset, and then go inside. 2 hours later, I was looking at the stars again just to see where they were, and I was marking where they were against, you know, like the hills over in the background, or the tree over here, there's a star on now, I'm going to watch where that one goes to. Then I get up 2 hours later, and I'm going, okay, yep, they should have moved 30 degrees. I won't do the maths for you now, but, you know. And then I'm looking at these stars moving around, and I'm going, and I'm going, I was just learning how to use hand things at that stage. If you come back in a couple of weeks, there's going to be a little thing up in the exhibition that shows you how to use your hand and calibrations and stuff. Anyway, and that's how I watched how the stars traverse through the heavens. I went out and watched them for real, and I did that for months, just to make sure that not like that night. That night was every 2 hours. I got up and I watched it all through the night and waited until the sun rose the next morning. And my wife says, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm going, "Oh, I'm studying." And she rolls home and goes to sleep. And I did that a couple of nights. Then I realised, oh boy, I'm getting tired. So, but I do things like that, and then I go up on our mountain and have a look, and I have a few places where I go to study. And it's way more fun doing that than it is looking at stellarium or all these planispheres that we have now that we study off. But sometimes, if it's rainy, if it's cloudy, you've got to. If you've got students that are catching up to you and going to go past you, you've got to have a little bit extra. Don't give them everything. Now I know why Nono only gave us a little bit at a time. Yeah. Anyway, that's I think I answered that question, did I?
Yes, you did. And it leads us nicely into any tohu.
I got a story about Jack's observations. It's a funny one. I think it was when we were sailing back, and then Jack pipes up and he says, "Oh, I can see an island." And we all sort of gather around and we're looking, and where? There. I've been looking at it for a long time, and it's there. So we're all looking at this island. Next thing, I says, "Jack, I think your island's floating." It was a cloud, and it slowly lifted.
We were actually on the dawn shift. And we were, Jackie was going, because Stanley was down asleep, and Jackie was going, "I know the Kermadecks are really close. I think I just saw it. That's the island there." And we're going, "Should I wake up Stan?" And we're going, "Yeah. And then you go, wake Stan, Stan gets up, his eyes, and, "Yeah, Jacko, your island's floating." Let me get back to sleep.
Like I said, I was just studying at the time. Oh boy, I'll get you fellas back.
We're right here, Jack.
While we're talking about being out on the ocean, and Uncle Marty's got some good stories about kai and being the cook, I know one funny one about Mummy's green pies.
Yeah.
Would Uncle Stan like to share that?
Yeah. So before we left, Mum baked us about maybe 14...
I think it was 20 pies.
Yeah, 20 pies, yeah, there were 20 pies. And we stowed them away, got them all ready for our trip, put them on our waka, and then I think we forgot about them for a little while.
No, we ate most of them.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Remember, we had six left. 6
left, yeah. So we thought we'll stash those away for the next, few watches, but then I think we forgot about it until one night we were on watch, and we said, "Oh, I think we still got those pies." So this is nearly about a week, 2 weeks into our voyage, and we said, "Oh, we'll go and look for it." So Jack, we went to look for these pies, and then we got up and we had these, and he said, "Oh, yeah, here they are." And it was dark, of course. It was during the night, early morning watch, and we put on a big cup of tea, and we got ready for these pies. And anyway, we cut the pies up and have your cup of tea. And back then we had no lights and everything. We were just going by a field, we're having a cup of tea and having a piece of pie and going, "That's the best pies we ever had." And I said, "Oh, yeah," I was going like this. "Oh, my mum, hey, she's the best pie maker, and the batter, the pastries are the best. You use about 2 pounds of butter in each pie," and all that sort of thing. We were all humming away and all enjoying that night, that pie, those pies. So then we had some left over, and so we'll keep the rest for the pies for the next day, for the next crew when they get up and do the watch change. So after our pie and satisfied. We come morning time and then I think it was Piripi. Got Piripi, eh?
Yeah.
Piripi got to, so we left some pies for you fellas to have a cup of tea with. Oh, okay. And when they brought the pies out that morning, it was like mould. Big mountains of mould all over the pie. Piripi looked at the fur just growing up, and Piripi looked at it and goes, "Is this the pies you fellas eat?" Oh, yeah. Oh, boy.
None of us got sick.
Yeah. We all got a penicillin shot.
Penicillin.
So, yeah, good old pies. Yep.
The worst part about that one was we ate 4 of the pies.
Yeah.
And only left 2 for the other crew, and they knew. No.
Famous pies.
Oh, sorry, bro. You were on that other crew, eh? You too could have had a green pie.
Yeah, and they call themselves the A-Team.
Oh, you did something.
The A-Team.
So who was in your team if you weren't the A-team, Sam?
They only called themselves the
B-team.
A-Team by letter. That was all they were. But I think we're Piripi. Atu. Max, yeah. And I think Clay might have been in our team too. Yeah. But it was quite a big rivalry between the two of them. And there's always a whole lot of banter going. And this guy was the worst, obviously, giving everyone crap. But yeah, it was fun. Kept us on our toes, you know.
Yep.
So coming into a serious moment on the canoe when you hit your first storm, what was that like?
Terrifying. Yeah. You know, you don't deny you were mataku. You were scared as because you know, you're in the middle of the ocean and there's big waves and the wind's howling but I think in that storm, even though we were all mataku up, and when you look at Mau sitting in his navigator, you look at him and you know there's that calming effect on you because this is the storm. You just got to look into the storm, he says to us. Don't look away, look into the storm. So, yeah, it was, yeah.
It was hard for us on the namesake on the support boat because a yacht and a catamaran, a double hull, act differently in a storm. So one, the waka hourua can hove to and put out a sea anchor and keep into the wind to ride the storm out, but in a yacht we only had 2 choices. That was either run from the storm or run with the storm because of a single hull, and it actually took a hard toll on because our role there was there to support Te Aurere, but because of the storm we had to go and run from Te Aurere to keep safe. So, and that was a really hard toll on the old fella, Hector. He was on the support boat with us, and you could literally see his wairua drop because he knew we had to leave the boys behind every time, and until we were able to join them again. So he carried it, and we had 4 storms. So there were 4 times that we actually had to leave Te Aurere, and for at least maybe the shortest part was about 12 hours to go and run out storm and then to run back. And that for 4 times for the old fellow, that for him his whole wairua was caring and thinking about the crew when we had to do that every time.
Just putting that into perspective, the mast of the support vessel was 80 foot high, and so in the height of the most fierce storm, the waves were huge, the winds were big, and we were on the waka looking at the escort vessel, and the troughs that when the escort vessel dropped down into the troughs, it did something that's known as tipping. Tipping is on a monohull, tipping right over and dipping the tip of the mast into the water. So it's virtually going like this, backwards and forwards like that. That's why they had to run away. They couldn't sustain that. You get too much damage and the possibility of things breaking up and loss of life and so forth. So, but 80-foot mast, to us, completely disappeared. So that tells you what the height of the waves were. So pretty amazing. But I just want to mention something about Mau, because Stanley had just said that he's a very calming influence. When we first got onto the waka, he gathered us around and he said to us, he said, I am the navigator, I am your father. The canoe is your mother. Look after the canoe and the canoe will look after you. So look after your mother and your mother will look after you. And as your father, I will look after you. You're all brothers on this voyage. And so by and large, we all worked as brothers. And that was a really great experience. And to this day, we're all still good mates. Which, 30 years later, eh? You know, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I remember waking up that morning I didn't wake up, I was on the midnight shift, so I was cooking breakfast. And I remember Mau, Mau gets up and he tells us to turn the canoe around. We need to go in a different direction. And we were heading towards the northwest, I think it was. And we got a ring from the support boat telling us to turn around, we're going the wrong direction. And Mau wasn't very happy at that. He was saying, oh, they are questioning me. And we actually, it caused a little bit of tension on board. Because we were told that Mau had all the mana for the voyage and that we would do whatever it was that he thought was right. And he turned us towards the northwest. He said, we've got to go this direction. Anyway, then when they questioned him, and he says, you know, why are they questioning me? And he says, okay, we need to learn a lesson. And so we turned the waka back, and then he tells us to pull down the sails. I mean, it was a nice morning, eh? Nice morning. We turned the waka around and we pulled the sails down and we're mucking around. I cooked breakfast and then we were all having breakfast, and then I remember Pakeke was one asking him questions. He says, why have we stopped, Mau? And Mau goes, oh, look this way. And he's pointing up towards northeast, and there's some clouds up there. He said, this one's storm. And then he points down to the southeast, and he says, look this way. We look down there, this one's storm. And we're going, oh, and what's going to happen there, Mau? And he says, oh, this one and this one come together and make big storm. And we're going, oh. Then he turns around and looks behind us, and he goes, and look at this one. And we go, hey, where'd those come from? And there's these big towering cumulus clouds behind us, getting darker. And he says, this one's storm. And we're going, yeah, we heard that before. And he goes, so what's going to happen? And he says, this one's storm, this one, make big storm. What about this one? He says, oh yeah, very bad. And we go, where's this going to happen? About here. We go, oh, let's go that way. Let's go that way. Never mind stopping. And he said, no, we'll learn a lesson. So we sat there all day, and it was, the storm sort of creeped up on us during the day. And by about mid-afternoon, we were getting some pretty serious winds and things. We tied everything down. Then as it started getting dark, it started getting a bit more terrifying, first time. And then just through that night, it was, I got stuck outside. My best mate, Pita, he was crook as a dog. He ralphed in the blimmin' in our bed. And I go, hey, Bruce, it's your watch. I'm trying to get him outside, he can climb in. I wanted to hide away, anyway, he goes, oh, and I go, oh, boy, yeah, I was going there. So I'm going to go find me. So I rolled myself up into one of the sails, because hosing down, waka was going around, and whenever a big wave came through, it roars, and we could hear and then it hit the waka and go, boom, boom, and that's what it felt like, and it was happening almost every wave by early evening, mid-evening. It was dark, and I was frightened. So was everyone else, because everyone was hiding somewhere. And rolled up in the sail, and then a big bulb of water formed up in front of me. I had my wet weather gear on. Then I moved around like this, and I got drenched by all this water. And you can imagine the language. Anyway, I climb out, and I'm going, oh, I'm wet. Oh, I know how to warm myself up. I'll go pump the holes. So I went down, we had these pumps in the middle of the waka, and I jumped down in there, I'm pumping away, and I'm getting warm, and I go, and then I climb up out of the hole, I put the lid back down, and I go, oh, I might as well sleep here. Anyway, I don't know what time of the night it was, but I was getting into the morning, early morning, in the middle of the night anyway. And this big wave comes in, poof, lifts up the waka, and then I haven't tied myself down or anything. I go down and smack my head against the upright. Oh, and I go, ah, damn it! And then almost thinking a waka comes down. I say, oh, that was a big one. And then another one. And I go, whoa, these waves are getting engaged. And I says, I don't want to go out and have a look at that, so I didn't. So I hunkered down, and I was in like this, and then a really big one came out, and I found myself out on the deck. I rolled out through, because we only had Velcro on our tents, and so I rolled out and knocked the thing out, the Velcro door thing, and I ended up on the deck on my hands and knees. I always say I was screaming. That's just for effect. I'm too much of a vital male to have been screaming on the deck. Okay, I was screaming. And because I thought I was going to die. I absolutely did. I thought, no, this is it. My worst nightmare. I'm going to die. And then I'm on, then there's water everywhere. And then it's like Stan said. Mau was sitting down in one corner with Clay sitting next to him, and he's got a little bottle of raki. It's a Dalmatian moonshine. Anyway, he's there, and I'm on my hands and knees, and I won't say what I normally say with the crew. Something about soiling trousers. I didn't, but I might have. Mau looks at me with this very, ngāwari look. Clay's glaring at me like going, what the hell? Quit that screaming, man. You're giving Marty a bad name. Anyway, so I crawl over to him, and Mau pours a cap and gives one to me. Next minute, Stanley's there. And then I think most of the crew came out, and we were all sitting around Mau, and Mau has taught us another valuable lesson. You can't hide from the storm. You have to have somebody watch the storm, and that's our job. And I always say to people, you get voyaging is about 80% boredom, because if you're not going very fast most of the time, it's boring. It's about 15% fun, when you've got nice winds and you're trying to get more speed and get these guys putting up 7, 8 sails all over the place. God, blimey, when 3 of them are good enough. And then, and then it's about 4% exhilaration when you're going faster than you think, and you're really, really awesomely doing, great things. And then there's 1% absolute terror. And I go, if you can get past that 1%, you'll be sweet.
The one thing that we also had learned from that experience was, because on the name saying we had a sail plan that we would head as far east and south to catch the trade winds up to Rarotonga. But when Mau gave the saying, oh no, we needed to go north-northeast, and that's where the tension became between the two. Yeah. And because we were actually, the thing about technology at the time is they would get a radio skeg on air pressures from radio Keri on the conditions, and they would get a printout of the weather systems in the Pacific and read out what the coordinates of the pressure points. And the pressure points showed them that to go northeast, we were going straight to a weather bomb, to stormy weather. Well, after we finally we got the word from Te Aurere saying, no, we've spent 24 hours in this rubbish weather, and Mau's the navigator, and Mau says we need to go north. So Namsang and things gave the thing, oh, okay, yep, we'll follow Mau. That was their job, to navigate. And we actually found out 2 nights later that Radio Kerikeri had been given, because they read off a fax, but someone had printed out the fax upside down. So what we thought was the bad weather to the northeast was actually the bad weather to the southwest, to which we headed to. And so it just shows the importance that, and the difference between having someone with that tohunga knowledge that knew their environment opposed to relying too much on technology. And so that was a learning thing for us, and a reminder that we were there for a purpose, to retrace what our to learn that art of navigation and that knowledge that we had lost for many years.
You know, the great thing about being a greenhorn, going out there and experiencing this for the first time, I can only speak for myself here, but when we came into the storms, I wasn't actually that scared. I wasn't scared at all, actually, because I just thought, well, this is what we signed up for, this is what it's like. I thought that every time you sail internationally, blue water sailing, that's what you get. And I was sort of wondering, why do people do this? And it wasn't until we were sailing back home and we left Rarotonga on a beautiful day, and it was just fabulous. And I was standing next to Stanley, and I said to Stanley, oh, I didn't realise sailing could be this good. And Stanley says, this is what we call champagne weather. I thought, oh, I'll have a bit of that. And so off we sailed, and that was great until we hit the cyclone.
Oh, yeah, well, on the trip back, we were cracking it every day, at least 120, 140 miles a day. And we were about 100 miles off the Cape from home. And so we were all making plans to have hangi the next night on our arrival to Aotearoa, because we knew it would take us a day to get there. And then one of the most awesome sights, and it shows you how green we weren't reading our environment. The swells were starting to pick up in the evening, and they had this huge pod of dolphins come through the swells, coming towards the waka, and they were actually the swells were actually big. They were actually leaping out of the swells, going about 20, 30, 40 feet in the air, and then entering the next swell. And we were all standing there in amazement and wonder, going, oh, this is nature at its finest. You don't get to see this every day. And then within about 4 hours, we had a storm. Then going, oh, they were coming to say hello. They were running from the storm that we were heading to. So it's those type of things that there's some great sights to see, but also the thing, oh, maybe it's a tohu or a sign that we really need to be watching on those type of things. And so our planning to go for a thing, it ended up one day, we ended up getting in 4 days later, and that was after we also broke our mast in the storm, and heading out after the storm, and had to put up a jury rig to finish the last part.
If I could just add a note on the storms. I think the storms were cleansing. They were cleansing for us. We hadn't done voyages like that for generations, and we needed cleansing. We needed cleansing of our dedication, our devotion to tāna mahuta. we were going into the realm of tangaroa, and we needed a shift. And we also needed to learn that whatever we've got in our heads on land, we have to leave on land. You take it with you into the blue water, it's gonna twist and it's not gonna serve you. So those storms and Mau's lesson as well to bring us into that storm and experience it, it was a necessary cleansing for us. And I think it's a necessary cleansing for any sailor. And one of the most important things for me that I learned from those storms was really relating to te po, the nothing. And wasn't during the storm, it was in the contemplation afterwards when it was much calmer. But in blue water, in the middle of the ocean, you're suspended on a waka, but you're not standing on something, you're suspended within that realm of tangaroa. You've got all that sky above you, and when it's night and it's dark, it was the first time I really think I grasped the concept of te po, was out there in that. And I had to go through those storms to get there in my head and to abandon everything that I had in my head when I was on land. So I just thought I'd add that.
No, ka pai. Ka pai. In contrast to that, what was it like the moment you saw land for the first time coming into Rarotonga?
Okay.
I'm trying to open up to let somebody else have a word.
I was standing next to Paulie Lenole, who's not with us anymore. And Mau had already seen it. He had this cute little smile on his face and sort of looking at him. And then Paulie spotted, I think, and maybe a few others. I think Jack was doing a bit of a cheer. But Paulie turned around and he said, "Oh, well, we've seen it. Let's go back now." Hey. But it related to, once you've dedicated yourself to that blue water, land, you know, it's a destination, it's a target, but, you know, you got to ask yourself, do I want to go there or not? You know, it's once you're on the blue water, it's, you know, it wasn't like, yeah, I want to go there. It wasn't like that. It was like, yeah, okay, there it is. Yeah, fine. Okay. It's all right. Yeah, so just
Mau and Max, Mau's nephew, Max Yarawamai, he had seen it, but he wanted one of the Aotearoa crew to spot it first. So apparently he was subtly hinting to them, he was singing, "This land is your land." And they all go, "What are you going on about?"
It felt like a homecoming for me. I'd wanted to go to Rarotonga, to sail to Rarotonga for many years. I'd turned down flights to Rarotonga and got rescheduled when I was meant to be landing there. I was doing a lot of travelling at the time as an artist, international travelling, and sometimes my travel agent would have me landing in Rarotonga just in transit. I said, "No, I'm not touching that land until I step off a waka." And she thought that I was absolutely crazy because I knew nothing about any waka that was going at that point of time. Anyway, when we did reach land, for me it felt like a homecoming, coming back to the home of our ancestors. And got off the waka, our seats were set up over there, and I thought that I was making my way to the seats, but I was actually going that way, like that, because I still had my sea legs. And I remember once we all sat down, the Prime Minister of the day, Sir Geoffrey Henry, his opening words were very powerful. He said, because we were given the new, the coconut with the straw on the top and the coconut water inside to quench our thirst. And so we're sitting there, and Sir Geoffrey said, "Drink deep of the new, for it is the drink of your ancestors." And I always remember that, and I thought, what a beautiful way, and what a beautiful way to be welcomed onto the homeland of our ancestors.
I remember when we got in, came through the pass and up to the beach, and the whole foreshore was full of people. But the whole New Zealand contingent were on the right next to the water. and doing haka, and basically doing haka pōhiri. And I was thinking to myself, I thought we were coming to Raro. It was like that. It was just like being at home. I'd never been into home on a waka before, but to have all of our New Zealand contingent that were at the arts festival turn up there, and there were hundreds of them. It was really uplifting. A cool thing to actually to experience.
Because it was Wakahuia were the Batatini champions that year, so they were representing at the thing. So they're on one side with our Aotearoa whānau that were all waiting there, and they were in our old Hato Petera alumni of the Pita, 12. Timo, was leading the haka pōhiri on one side, and on the other side, other half of the beach was the Cook Islanders going hard out with their drums, and it was almost like they were trying to drown each other out. And but it was one of those te ihi, te wihi, te wana, those type of moments that you just can't recreate.
Yeah, no, it was exhilarating coming in, just seeing so many people. It was amazing, eh? Just good to get there and know we'd done it, It was just a sea of people.
Bittersweet. I think we could have quite easily just carried on past if we had to, But getting to the island was great, and seeing all the loved ones was great. And the haka pōhiri was awesome. But just knowing that voyage had ended was a little bit sad.
I think for me it was just getting there, and I think just seeing all our whānau, and also just fulfilling that first part of Te Aurere's journey. And I think the next few days after that I started thinking about how we're going to get home. It was time to go home. It was good to just and see the other wakas that were there, especially Hokulea. Hokulea was there, and then to see Ned in the bay and Ngātangia and all our Cook Island wakas there was a pretty awesome sight, and then sitting and then sharing the stories and about the trip and that, and then start prepping for the journey home. Yep.
Thinking of the next things coming in the future, now that you confirmed, yes, we've done the voyage, moving forward, we've had 30 years, what is the legacy for kaupapa waka hourua for you?
Start at this end. Before we left, and after having been selected to sail on Te Aurere on the inaugural voyage, we were asked to make a commitment to the revival of waka hourua, to the revival of voyaging. And so each of us have gone about it in different ways and focused on different aspects of it. For myself, I was very interested in building canoes, and arriving in Rarotonga, I had the great privilege and pleasure to meet Te Tika Mataiapo, who did the welcoming karanga for us. She ended up adopting me into their family, and through that relationship I met Sir Thomas Davis, and Sir Thomas Davis took me under his wing and taught me the boat building skills of how to build waka hourua using modern materials. And that led me to being commissioned by a German philanthropist to build 7 waka. And so those waka are out there now sailing in the Pacific and in Aotearoa. And then finally I had to fulfill another dream, and that was to build one for Tairāwhiti. And we completed that in 2017. So we all went about it in different ways. That was my commitment.
Aukumari?
Oh, it's... well, I've been with waka since '79, so it's either with some form, whether it's waka tau or waka hourua. Because a part of those things, and with waka taua as well, it teaches that where we came from and where we went to as well. So we had waka ama and Mau said that's what they did. They learned to build. So there's the art of tārai waka is important. The karakia and stories that go with building waka and waka taua and all forms of waka are important to not lose those skills as well. Yeah. And so Hector was very influential in training tārai waka, and to make sure that also that part of that thing was not only building but teaching the kōrero, teaching the karakia that goes through every stage of building a waka, and a lot of those techniques like the lashing has been transposed into from waka hourua to waka taua as well, in the way that we're doing it now. But I've always been, I've been a cook. I've been at the back. Someone, our army marches on its stomach, kai hoi, row on their stomach as well. So that's usually been my job, and he pai ki mua, he pai ki muri. So if things are well at the back, then things are going well in the front. That and that's been my role. I quite like being in the background, doing the mai. Someone's got to do the mai in the background and help. So ones like Stanley and the rest of them can do their job out at the front in tutoring. So that's what my commitment has always been with waka, and always will be with waka, regardless of which form it is. And that's been my role in the work I've done. I've been involved in several government departments, working as a cultural advisor and teaching mātauranga Māori and whakaaro Māori concepts within that in the mai. So mātua whāngai with te koanga reo when I was at Māori Affairs, with papakainga housing with Housing Corp, and other types of jobs. So it's saying that being out in the ocean, that there's a thing to do, but there's also it gave me the thing to do as much for our people where we can. And so, and part of that was doing in the treaty industry, working with Crown Forestry Rental Trust and helping claimants go through their claims. So it's yeah, and that's my. I think that we I'm now one of the on somehow got roped into the Tai Tukura rep who lives in Wellington on the Hau Komaru, which is a committee to ensure about waka hourua, voyaging and that. And I think one of the things that we had from our recent things was our festivals are really great, that we got to go out and venture. We got to go voyaging, so we don't forget that school, and that's what we hope to actually think, that yeah, we've done our triangle. Maybe at some time we need to go outside of our triangle and visit the other islands that we haven't been to within the triangle and outside as well. Because the triangle is really a concept that we've adopted somehow.
I guess on the weak link of the OG crew, I did the trip to Turei. I came back, and then I guess because I was young, I went off and studied forestry, and I haven't been on a waka since then. And then I moved to Australia. But I look at how far it's all come now, and it's just amazing from when we started, and what everyone's achieved. It's amazing to see. But being back together with all these guys, 30 years, and it's funny how things haven't really changed much. We got older and greyer and larger, but, you know, it's still the same. It's
Speak for yourself.
I keep wanting to look at the photos to see what... My daughter said she didn't recognise me when I showed her a photo. She goes, "That's not you."
So I think with that first voyage of Te Aurere, Rarotonga, I think lots of, over the 30 years, I could talk about a story when myself and Hotu, back in the days when we had Te Aurere in Auckland, we used to have our school holidays, and it'll all be a phone call. We'll ring up each other, or he'll ring up and goes, "Oh, what should we do with our kids this holiday weekend?" And I said, "Oh, we've got Aotearoa down here. We'll just bring all the kids around and we'll chuck them on the waka." And I remember us sailing, going to Waiheke Island with a bunch of kids. There was no such thing as health and safety in those days, and we had Pumai Te Rangi, we had all Heme and all that. They had Uncle Matey on his little fizz boat, but not realising, as me and him were doing these things with Aurere at that time, that how over 30 years it's sort of just built up this momentum to the likes of Te Mano, Te Moana, and Wakatapu, and us sailing in 95 and all. But just back then we just wanted to get out on the water with our kids and take them for a bit of a haerenga, and just get them just enjoying on the waka and stuff. And then now, 30 years later, you'll see some of the kids that we had back in those heydays, and they're all taking up amazing roles in the kaupapa. So, you talk about succession. I think 30 years has been a lot of successions and a lot of things that have happened with our wakahaurus and the kaupapas that are happening, and Te Hau Komaru is one of them. Been that, and I think another one was the Tuia 250. That would really, pretty much opened a lot of, whakatatu'd a lot of things, but also opened a lot of things regarding wakahaurua and all that. So it's been a big, amazing 30-year journey, and if you talk about what's succession, and well, pretty much there's 30 years, there's a lot happened within that. So that's the sort of thing we're going to look at for the future, and how our kaupapa is going to carry on, especially for wakahaurua. And I think another good one will be the amount of teaching and mātauranga place that we got now. You look at where we got our couple of whetus, started up at Aurere, but now they're at Tauranga and Kahununu and over to Kawhi and all around there. So it's happening. So I think it's awesome that's come through this far.
Well, I think what Craig says, you got to have that commitment. You've got to be totally committed to that kaupapa to carry that on. And at that time, for me anyway, it's pretty hard to maintain that, especially for being down the bottom of the country, But in saying that, these guys have just carried it on, and so proud of them that they've kept going with that same kaupapa, I think last night, my wife was telling me this morning that last night someone said, probably after a few shots, Jacko, that maybe when Te Aurere is finished, that the crew could get back together and have a sail. Yeah. Is that you?
That'd be fun.
Maybe, yeah, that'd be fun. And we'll take a couple of young ones to do all the hard work. Any volunteers out there?
I'll have to put a hydraulic crane on board. Lift us all on.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if we're talking about where we're at now compared to where we were in 1992, we have come a long way. My sole purpose really is just the retention of the mātauranga for the navigation, and so. We've been. I remember when Hector asked me, "Oh, we need to start training some people, boy," you know. And back in I think about 2003 or so, he wanted to run wānanga. So, which pretty much meant me and Stanley had to think of most of the content for that. And so we would bring people in, we'd take them out on Aotearoa, and in the evenings we'd do stars and all that sort of stuff. And that went pretty good. And then we got some guys that were coming along that were learning a lot, you know. And we were thinking, wow, we've got to give them an opportunity maybe to do what we did. With all these people that were coming, we would take them out. Oh, well, this is me out on the star compass. Come out on the star compass, and I'd have a torch, and I wouldn't turn it on to start with. I'd say, "Can you see this bright star up here?" And I'd point up here like this. And then I'd be looking at everyone to see who's looking at where my finger's pointing. And 2/3 of the group wouldn't be looking in that direction. They'd be looking somewhere else. And then I'd see the ones that are looking at the star that I'm pointing at. And I go, they're the ones I'll concentrate on. Probably why out of like, over those 5 or 6 years, we had like 300 people, I think, turn up. Not all the time, you know, about 50 people at a time. But there were a lot of repeat offenders that came back. And we gave an opportunity to 3 guys to graduate. And first of those was Manihira Forbes. He navigated Haunui to Hawaii in 2011. And then there was Pita Smith, who navigated Te Aurere to Rapa Nui. And then there was Hemi Eruera during that Wakatapu voyage, who navigated Te Aurere home. And we all agreed that they had graduated. And so out of 300 people, we graduated 3. That's 1% success rate. If you think about that, that's not a lot. But it's probably accurate. Navigating a waka is difficult. Not so much, I think, physically, but mentally, you drain yourself. You have to, learn to live with a lot less sleep than your mates around you. And so, from my perspective, because when I got asked if I wanted to train to be a navigator, and Pita Evans and I were the ones that were chosen to do that, we travelled to Hawaii for about 4 years, and we never saw winter. And that group of guys were all referred to these days as boys of summer, because we would sail up in Hawaii in summer and then come home and sail in our summer, trying to share what we were learning up there. And that continued on. Then we started those wānanga, and we graduated those 3 guys. And what I remember about our time was that the sleep deprivation was the hard part. Learning all the stuff of how to find direction and maintain it and know where you are and come across the island by accident later. That was a joke, you can laugh. Okay, maybe you don't want to, but that's okay. What it taught me was that being a navigator is not for everyone, and then because you have to dedicate yourself to it. Voyaging is one thing, And and we have a lot of awesome voyages, but we have very few actual navigators. There's a lot of people that are calling themselves navigators, and I don't know where they get their calling from, but reality is you have to test yourself beyond what you would be doing if you were voyaging as a kaumana. And so that strike rate of 3 guys graduating is probably right. We started our school again Te Kuruwaka. In 2015 we had about, this time I narrowed it down to wanting young people. I don't know whether that was the right thing to do, because most of our old crew went, you're leaving us out. Well, I'm on 0, I better hurry up. But I've got an awesome bunch of young people that have been learning, but we haven't been able to give them a voyage yet. And what Marty said, I think it was you, Marty, that we have to keep voyaging. That's true, but we have to do it in a safe way, because the ocean is not as safe as it was when we left in 1992. Climate change has changed the weather patterns, and we have to be more than those guys that left in 1992 now, if we're going to keep our voyages safe. And it's the onus on the leadership to actually bear in mind that they're asking people to go out into a harsher environment than when perhaps they first voyaged, and that the likelihood of seeing storms, even though we talk about all the storms we've seen a lot, but I think those storms were at a certain level, and we're looking into the face of greater storms, and if we're out in those, are they going to be survivable? So those are the sort of things that we have to weigh up when we're asking our people to do these, to gain these experiences. So, and for the most part, they are capable of it, absolutely. And that's where I think we're at today, is we have a lot more voyagers that are stronger than we were, more capable, and have been trained really well. And there's a lot of you in the crowd that are those people. And from us up here that have been through those early stages, we should actually applaud you guys, because you're the ones that are going to be the next generation that keeps people safe. So I think I better stop, because it's question time. But ngā mihi rā kia koutou, koutou mako tai mai nei runga I te karango tēnei kōrero. Ai, mi haro rawa ki te ki ngā kōrero aku nei hoa nei, tuku atu ki a koutou. Ai, tēnā tātou.
That's a lovely segue to Pita, if you'd like to share anything before we go and hand it back to question and answers.
I want to agree with everything that's been said, but I want to add something. And that something is, as well as everything that has been said, waka voyaging and our reconnecting to waka voyaging is a pathway to understanding our command as Māori, and throughout the Pacific as well, of science and mathematics. And so rather than just stop at the physical things of voyaging, we've got a day off with Matariki now, which really came out of this, That's only one corner of the whole thing. Over time, we need to do the rest of the observations as well that we do on land with regard to Matariki and such like that. But I just want to emphasise our journey on the oceans. We need to reflect in our journey of comprehending how our ancestors understood science and to own it as it is today. To own astrophysics, to own nanotechnology, to see within all of those ancient karakia the keys to our understanding of our world. Kia ora, that's all.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora. Nō reira, tēnā rā tātou katoa, I nāia nei, ka huri aki tātou kia koutou. Now we're going to see if anybody would like to tuku mai tahi pātai. Ki wa tātou tōpū tēnei ata. We've got two ladies with the mic down the front and there's a mic up the back there. So just put your hand up if you have a pātai, please.
No, good.
Tēnā koutou. I just have two questions. What kind of tree was the waka carved from? And did you see any whale upon your adventure?
Yeah, kia ora. The Te Aurere waka and also the other waka ngā hiraka down here, they are both carved from kauri. Right.
What was the second one?
Whale.
Whales.
Oh, there was a black and white porpoise when we left Whangaroa. I don't know if anybody else saw that. And there were two albatrosses that accompanied us until something happened. And then there was the frigate bird that came out before we started land, that I remember.
Waka generally tend to be whale dolphin magnets. What's a good example? Well, Marty gave a good example, but they were running away from a storm. But when we 1995, we sailed up to Hawaii. On our graduation voyage. When we crossed the equator, we were accompanied by a huge pod of bottlenose dolphins, and they, we actually sat there and discussed it and felt that was a pinnacle moment for us, because we believed those were our tupuna that were accompanying us into the northern hemisphere. And that was a pretty cool thing. And it was at night. There was a big moon up, and they were playing around us, and the phosphorescence in the water, from their trails, was just something beautiful, and they were jumping out of the water. When they chase the canoes, they just swim most of the time. You don't see them jumping out all that often. Every now and then, one or two, but these were dolphins jumping all over the place.
And adding to that, I think when that happened, I think some of our crew were taking photos and stuff. Well, when we developed those photos, when we got to land, we couldn't. They were nothing. So I think it was just for the eyes for us to see that happen. But it was pretty amazing.
There was, on Te Aurere, we encountered on our trip to Rapa Nui. We were running through squalls at the time, and in one squall we were screaming through, and then we saw in the middle of the squall was this pod of whales that were feeding. So they were using the storm weather to gather the fish and drive them to the surface so they could feed. And it was one of those moments where we go, wow, but we were trying to readjust ourselves, because when the squall hits, it's not the safest time to be going at 8 or 9 knots. But so there are little moments that thing. And I think I saw on a one of those nature shows that it's the same type of thing. They go in a mass and they look like they're playing, but they're actually herding together and using their blowholes to blow the fish to this, the krill or whatever, to the surface. And they were feeding, and they were using the squall and the stormy weather as cover to so they could drive them up. But it was we were cruising that fast, and that happened over about 4 or 5 minutes, and they were gone again.
I just want to join with Jack to acknowledge all of those people that have taken up voyaging, and the various challenges that arise from that, getting through those challenges. And a voyage is like a voyage of life. It's like your own voyage in life. So I just want to acknowledge everybody that's picked up that challenge, that tohu, and use that as a tohu to drive this kaupapa forward. But when I think about it, I think about Hekenukumai Ngāiwi. You know, he was a bridge builder, yes, but Ngāiwi, when it came to Te Aurere, he was dictated by his name to do that. And he explained it to me one night. And I really appreciate that. I'm getting goosebumps. But there are some people that are just born into things that they have no choice. Hoturo. You had no choice, bro. You've picked up that ako, and I just want to acknowledge you and everybody else. Kia ora.
Ai, kia ora tātou. He pātai anō o tātou. Cup of tea time, Uncle Jacko said. No. Oh, kia ora.
I usually have a big voice so I can try it. Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Deb Reweri, taku ingoa, no koro rare ka ahau. Kia ora, I just want to acknowledge all of you sitting up there and sharing your narrative with us. I think it's really qualitative and heartfelt and humorous. And I think if there's anything that we leave as a legacy for the ones that are going to follow on, it's heart and humour. And in a way where they can tap into mātauranga Māori that makes them feel uplifted. I think it's mana enhancing. So I'm thinking of all the babies that are sitting in the room at the moment, and I'm thinking of the ones, you said there are some that are crewing at the moment. So I just want to acknowledge that you're leaving some of that kōrero behind. And, you know, I marvel at what you've been able to share today. And I'm down here visiting my sister, and when I heard about what was happening yesterday, that I could be here today was just humbling and an honour for me. So kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora. Nā.
Ka pai, no reira, i hau te tuku mihi atu kia koutou katoa I tēnei rangi, tēnei rā tāhua. Growing up with all of these waka uncles of ours, we were real privileged with our papa piripi, and the stories, the humour is constant. I te wā ka tāmai wētahi o wēnei, it was just humorous watching our dad just light up. And so tino miharo tō tātou nei tupuranga ki Wanganui tēnei kaupapa, anō hoki ki tō tātou māma I tautoko here I tēnei kaupapa mo taku pāpā. So with all the love in my heart and without crying, just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity to have this interview, discussion panel, and this beautiful celebration. So mihi atu ki tō tātou kai whakahaere, anō nei kia koutou katoa ko tā mai tēnei rā. Nō reira, I runga I tira, kia mutu tā tātou hui nānei, e Papa Pita, mau anō e kapia tō tātou wahanga? Ki tētahi karakia?
Come there,
Ka pai, Uncle Jackie.
Kia ora.
Ai, kia ora anō tātou. Tēnei ka huri tātou ki te wahingaru, mo tēnei karakia e whakaoti nei ngā kōrero o ngā rangatira nei ki a koutou. Tēnei he mihi nui I rungi a koutou, mo te tautoko mai, o tō mātou nei kōrero. Kua tuku mai nei o tātou nei pūrākau, ki runga I a koutou. Nā rei, tēnā tātou. Kia noi tātou. E tō mātou matua, mei ngā kōkoe te waka nei a whia mātou I runga I tara ki te rangatonutanga. He hoe a kau, he ārahi a mātou I runga I tara ki te tika, ki te pono, ki te rangi mārie. Hei paupupuri a mātou I ngā wātu whakawaitanga ko tō wairo hei koro ai kawai a mātou. I roto I ngā rātu mai nei mui a mātou aroaro, whakakahangi a mātou tinana kia ua e tā mātou hoe whakamua I runga I tara ki tō rangatonutanga ake ake. Amene. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Jack.
And just a reminder, we have another panel in here at 1 p.m. So time for a cup of tea and come back.